Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. This is the time when manifestos, committees are being formed to work on manifestos for political parties. It's an important time for all political parties as they gear up for the elections. But of course, in this time, what remains on top of the agenda for all political parties is economy, considering the state of Pakistan at this time. We'll be talking about what kind of a roadmap can we expect economically from all political parties. The major political parties, of course, having what kind of an economic outlook do they have for the future of Pakistan. We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about, of course, the state at this time as far as the caretaker government is concerned and the fact that it's postponed its plan to issue a 1.5 billion international bond. We'll be talking about, of course, the finance minister Jamshed stating that the country will need more IMF loan programs due to the fragile state of the economy. Exactly the fragile state of the economy and what the political parties have in store for us in the upcoming elections, when they talk to the people, when they plead with their voters for their votes. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Qaiser Ahmad Sheikh, who's a former SAPM on finance and revenue, also from PML-N. Thank you so much for being with us today. We also have with us Dr. Nasir Iqbal, who's an economist, head of PIDE Macro Policy Lab. Thank you for joining us today. And we have with us Saif Baryar, who is a political analyst. Thank you for being with us today. Ji, I'm going to go to Qaiser Saab and then come. Ji, Qaiser Saab, as far as PML-N is concerned, 2000, of course, I think the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif Saab has also stated that the state of the economy pre-2018 and the fact that according to the PML-N, they had set the right kind of momentum for the economy. Do you agree with that?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mahrukh, Nawaz Sharif visited, along with his team, visited Lahore Chamber of Commerce and Industry yesterday, and he mentioned that Pakistan was growing with fast growth rate in 2017, and had Pakistan continued that growth, our position would have been much, much better than what is today. So all those development and all those actions were reversed, and that is why we faced both deficit in balance of trade and also deficit in fiscal deficit and budget deficit. So that's, you see, we also are facing population growth, and there is a poverty, number of people below poverty line is very much increased these 6 years. 40% of our population is below poverty line, numbering about 95 million of people. So you see, we need what happened in these 5 years, that we had been facing political turmoil. And instead of having a charter of economy, because the economical conditions were miserable, and instead of having mutual consultations and having collaboration between various parties, we have been confronting. So that was the main reason that what happened. We are facing that our exports could not increase. There was no direct foreign investment. Mian Saab mentioned that if some capital is coming in for the generation of industry or for the establishment of industry, in his earlier period during 1990, he gave that policy that any amount or any money which is being diverted to industrial sector, that amount should not be much interrogated. So that was the policy which enhanced a lot of industry, particular in SME sectors. So people, new entrepreneurs established factories and various type of industries which are value added, and some exports were also increased. So we are expecting a lot to be done after next elections. we should have more and more collaboration. Mia Saab mentioned rightly that we presently don't believe, we have never been believing, and still we don't believe in taking some actions against our political opponents. So we want to
let me come back to you, Qaiser sir, on that. Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Nasir Saab. Nasir Saab, you heard what Qaiser Ahmad Sheikh Saab is saying in terms of what he believes and what the PML-N believes as the economic roadmap. SMEs in particular, as to what kind of incentives the PML-N believes they can offer their voters. What's your opinion on this?
I think PIDE recently conducted a study on looking into the manifesto of political parties. If you look into that manifesto report that PIDE recently published, you can find that these political parties have some vision in terms of narrating the issues. Like they said, there is a power issue, we will resolve that issue. There is uncertainty, we will resolve that, we create an investment climate for all those things. But when we deeply study what the roadmap they have, they only, like what we call, they make promises to get the vote, but actually they don't have any real roadmap to materialize those wishes that they committed when they are in the election cycle, and when they elected, they even don't have a clear vision how to achieve all those things. Yes, all these political parties have some sort of like a vision in terms of addressing these structural issues, but how to address those issues, that's the real issue where these political parties are lacking. Even the claim that the honorable member from the PNL make that if they remain in power, probably the economic situation would be different. But if we look into the way they were in power, they were in power in different shapes, in either in the Punjab, either in the federal. But look at the growth trajectory.
But isn't it true that isn't it true that a political party with the kind of mandate that it comes, is going to have a huge impact on the kind of policies it can dictate and the kind of numbers it comes with? I want to go to Saif Saab on this, and I'll come back to you. Saif, do you agree with this? Because of course, this is a recurring issue with political parties. We've seen, even other political parties have of course complained that they don't have the kind of time, the kind of numbers that they need in the assemblies to bring about the kind of change that they would like, either economic reform or social reform or legal reform, any of those, and those are integral to any kind of economic growth.
Mahrukh, thank you for having me here. I'd like to pick up the argument from where you left right now. In fact, it was a very nice analysis from your side yourself. Maybe since the past 40-50 years, we've not been giving out national manifestos. This is a harsh reality of our country and the democracy of this country. But for the very first time, I'm observing that at least PML-N as a political party, it's trying to incorporate the national spectrum. Now recently, Nawaz Sharif's move into Balochistan and maybe bringing about former BAP members into the party, and then again bringing about at least 5 former members of Pakistan People's Party into the party as well. This is maybe the realization of the fact where maybe PML-N left the governance reforms back in 2017. And if you look at CPEC as well, CPEC is very closely linked to Balochistan as well, and the economy of Balochistan and the political spectrums of Balochistan. So I generally do believe that for the very first time, I'm at least seeing the foundation of a positive manifesto, a manifesto that incorporates the national spectrums. On the other hand, if politically this question is thrown at me, that what is happening to the other parties, I'd be very disheartened to say that People's Party right now, it is still resorting to that same politics of regionalism that it has always resorted to. Now, People's Party maybe is having the impression that PML-N right now is the king's party, right? And they're having this impression that maybe Nawaz Sharif had struck a deal while coming back to this country and ultimately landed into the national politics once again. But you need to realize that People's Party, a party that was formed in 1967, a party that came into the national government for more than 5 times, even if today it is saying that Nawaz Sharif should restrict his politics to Lahore, maybe this is the biggest form of a democratic blunder that People's Party is committing right now, and a potential alliance of People's Party. I'm speculating a potential alliance of People's Party with PTI as well, because maybe this is not the continuation of the PDM anymore. I take it to a little level of humor. This is the PM movement right now. This is not the PDM movement anymore. This is the PM movement right now. And every party simply wants to form the cabinet and to have the premier seat to themselves. But I genuinely feel that in the next 2-3 months, the political party that number one captures the swing voter, that number two gives an economic manifesto more than anything else, and PML-N is leading that race right now. As a neutral analyst, I'm saying this, they will bag the national elections that are coming in
because
February.
Now, if we look at what's is going to matter most to the voter, it is that economic policy. It is that what they believe will change things for them. Because every I think all strata of society are facing some form of economic, if it's not a crunch, it's a change, it's a rethink, because things have significantly changed over time. Let me go to Qaiser Ahmad on this. Qaiser Ahmad, there is a political rethink as far as your manifesto at this time is concerned. Of course, your old policies that you believe are going to be were the reason, according to you, for the success that the PML-N had pre-2018. But are you also rethinking, considering the youth, considering that the change, again, the swing voter, which here Saif Saab is talking about?
Yes, you see, all parties are now in the process of making their manifestos, formation of manifestos. PML-N also giving a lot of devotion on this. But you see, the things are known to everyone. You see our huge population, which is fifth largest country in the world, and we need growth, we need foreign trade enhancement, we particularly export, and then we need direct foreign investment, conducive circumstances to have that investment. You see, our rich people, there is a big gap between rich and the poor, and our people are earning lot of windfall profits last 2-3 years because of the COVID, because of the increase in the price of dollar. So I feel that definitely we should give more emphasis on getting more and more revenues, because it's still we are facing a lot of difficulties. Just 2 days before, document which is signed, policy level agreement between IMF and our finance ministry, that is mainly they are emphasizing on having more revenues. At present, we are only getting 8% of our GDP revenues, and more money is coming as a debt from whatever is the debt.
You're a businessman yourself, and as far as business is concerned, PML-N is thought to have somewhat of a forte or some expertise in business in particular. As far as capturing the confidence of businessmen, trying to bring in investment, is there a rethink in that also?
Yes, you see, we had already, PML-N had already, Mia Nawaz Sharif was the Prime Minister for 3 tenures. So in all those tenures, he gave boost to private business, and in those periods, people were more comfortable to have business. There were free trade was envisaged. You see, business people feel easier because Mia Saab himself come from that background, and even still, you see, there's the potential is there. You must acknowledge that in the earlier periods up to 1970, Pakistan was growing almost double than India. Our growth was at that time 6%, and India was 3%. And IMF used to say that Indian economy has Hindu rate of growth. So there is a potential. We should facilitate investment. There's a huge potential of a lot of money in the word is now circulating to those destinations where there is more bottom line profits, bottom line results are there. So recently you must have seen this government, interim government, they give attention to the stoppage of smuggling. That was the main reason that the things were being smuggled. So what I say is that Pakistan stock exchange almost increased 35%. There's potentially there. Still our all industries are giving good results, but people are wish there should be consistent policies. There should not be confrontation between the parties. Charter of economy is a very important thing which our next government should envisage. Even opposition should be taken into confidence, and that is the main, because we are a big country. There's a large number of people, and SMEs in particular in Pakistan, they had not been given incentives. Most of the loans is given to the big
about
industrialists.
SMEs in particular. I will come back to you. Let me take Dr. Nasir's expert opinion on this. Dr. Nasir, what about the role of SMEs? Do you think, traditionally speaking, as far as political parties are concerned, have they invested enough in SMEs? Because we saw that, even the last government talked about SMEs. It talked about investing in SMEs. It talked about, giving a lot of incentives to SMEs. But did they really translate, in your opinion?
If we look into the way how the private sector works, private sector basically work when there are markets. So if we look into the government footprint, and the PIDE study again shows that around 70% is the government footprint. So they are indirectly or directly managing all those economic activities. So the private sector would only grow when we give them a competitive market, when we allow them to compete with each other, when we give them an environment where they actually have a fair competition, and also a confidence in terms of economic policies from the government side. Though there are short-term measures, like in the previous government as well as the earlier governments, they make a very quick decision by giving some sort of cheap loan to the people to boost SMEs, and to some extent give like an installment pattern, etc., etc. But look at the take-up rate of those economic initiatives that are taken by, even if we look into the example of PML-N, youth loan program scheme. They meant to create a small businesses. They meant to promote especially the women in the businesses. But State Bank's own figure show that it was a failure. The failure means that how the program was designed, how the restrictions were imposed, how the conditions were imposed. So all these create as a burden, as a culture of NOC, as a culture of documentation. Those basically hurt, especially SMEs. We conducted a study in Twin City to look into the vision of these small enterprises. We asked them whether you are willing to expand your business. They said no. This is the real issue with us. They are happy, they are good enough with whatever they are doing. They don't have enough vision. The vision should come from the government. How government facilitate them? If you are creating a fear factor, that's what currently is going on, there will be no investment. So the real things would come when there is the environment of stability, when people have a confidence on the government as well as the economic policies of the government. Once they have the confidence, then they start investing, then they start expanding their businesses. We don't have a
But how do we get, Saif, how do we get to that confidence? When there are elections, when people will elect their own leaders, there will be confidence.
Thank you, Mahrukh, for this question. In fact, this needs to be answered. I remember that Dr. Saab quoted a very wonderful statement last time when we were sitting here. He said there should be a charter of prosperity. I think you remember that as well.
I do.
Now, the charter of prosperity that he was talking about, I think in the world of neoliberal economics, political optimism is the catalyst to economic optimism. Now, if you look at the regional economies, if you look at the tiger economies growth of South Asia, if you look at the Asian economies, even if we look at the Latin economies like Brazil, etc., one of the main reasons for these economies to be having this enormous growth is political optimism. Now, people are very certain about what political parties are giving in as manifestos, when will be the manifestos executed within the tenure of the government, and what will be the time-bound targets. Now, unfortunately, in our case, what's the biggest hurdle? The biggest hurdle is that when there is political uncertainty and the parliamentary politics has been redundant since the past 4 or 5 years, what's the economic optimism you're giving to the common businessman out there? You were talking about SMEs. I'll quote a research that was given in by the Competition Commission back in July 2023. It was estimated that with policy measures, we need to be accelerating SME financing to 17%, right, Dr. Saab? And hardly 6 to 7% has been granted as yet. And if you look at Bangladesh SMEs targets, they're at 25% of the private sector financing. India is at 18%. Because in global economic phenomena of neoliberal economics, we need to be understanding that we are affiliated with the IMF, we are affiliated with the World Bank, we're affiliated with a bunch of multinationals bringing in FDI. But FDIs should be checked and balanced with SME growth as well. Because what's the biggest problem of Pakistan right now? The biggest problem is that you are sending out more dollars than what you're bringing into the country. This is the biggest economic problem of the country. You're importing far more than what you're exporting. Now, how can that be corrected? That can be corrected when small-scale enterprises are encouraged. That leads to export-oriented growth. But the problem is that they're every time they're encouraged in theory, whenever maybe competition commissions gives in a research, maybe PIDE gives in a research, these are theoretical measures. The practice of theoretical measures comes from political optimism. You have the elections at the time, the average voter exactly knows what economic policy of macro level, fiscal or monetary to expect, and I think that will be the ultimate growth of SMEs.
Let me go to Qaiser Ahmad on this. Qaiser Ahmad, Parliament having the confidence in your government, having that confidence in your economic team is essential for any long-term, prosperity for any country. You think there will be that confidence after the elections in the economic team that comes out, for example, if it comes out from the PML-N?
I feel that in PML-N there's a better team on the economic side, but still we should find those people who can directly contest election and come from the background of economic know-how, and they have expertise and experience. You see, the things now has become so easy. Everybody knows the formula of development. All these countries in our region, they developed. What we did, we could not give confidence of consistent policies in economic matters. And also, you see, up to now, we have been only facilitating a big industrialist and a businessman with who could offer collaterals to the banks. So SMEs...
That's where, your traditional politics that the PML-N has been doing. Do you think, you need to perhaps tweak it a little bit? You think that it's enough to bring Pakistan out of the kind of quagmire, unfortunately, that exists at this time economically?
Of course, we need more consultation. You see, of course, at present, the parties are confronting each other. Our emphasis should be given more on development, and there should be there should be some common agenda, some minimum agenda of economic side agreed by the parties. If all parties, you see what happened in our state-owned enterprises, they are losing almost 600 to 700 billion rupees every year, but still we could not have some collective or some agreed privatization, some program could not, although every party in their manifesto has been advocating that all those enterprises which are losing money, they should be privatized, but it could not happen. So we should have some consensus. Of course, PML-N is a better equipped because of experience and because of their previous governments, what they know, what were the failures, what were the success.
Yes, but I want to come to you and talk about, of course, Minister for Finance and her statement, when she said, the fact that we can't, IMF is a reality for a while. Are you going to be, is the PML-N cognizant of working with that reality? I want to come and talk to you about that. I'm going to go to Dr. Nasir and I'll come back to you. Dr. Nasir, you heard what Qaiser was saying. You can't, separate the political from the economic, because when you talk about economy, then it talks about stability, then there's talk about confidence in the government, then it's about numbers that will bring about those kind of policy changes that we want. So in terms of politics, in terms of the kind of confidence we need, isn't it true that there seems to be a lack of confidence for all political parties, or confidence in all political parties is an all-time low?
Yeah, of course.
At all time.
Yes, let me, we just completed a survey to look into the perception of the people, how they feel this upcoming election would help to restore the economic stability. Unfortunately, what we heard from the people, that around more than 50% people believe that it would not be the case. Why they are electing? They are electing with the narrative that we are creating before the election. So that's the one key issue, because they feel that if all political parties don't have a trust on this in this election year or election cycle, then probably we will end up with the same situation that we are facing over the last 1 decade. And the one key thing, if we compare our neighboring country, let's take the example of India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, what is different from them and us? There are two key factors that really help us to restore our confidence. One is our economic model, another is political model. So we are lacking in both in terms of the confidence as well as the stability. Look into the growth pattern. Our regional country is growing with the average 6%. We have a minus growth. Average inflation in neighboring countries is around 3%, 4%. We have a 30%. Average interest rate is 5%, 6%. That promotes business, and we have a 22%. Poverty is relatively high. As Qaiser Sahab earlier said, the relatively poverty is high, around 25%, 26% poverty is in our country. Why this is happening? To us, that we study at PIDE the economic model as well as the political stability. These are the two things. And what we call, what would be the economic model? In 70s, in 80s, the economic model was different. We believe on infrastructure development. At that time, it was the requirement. We fulfill those requirements. We grow roughly 6%, 5%. But now this is a different era. This is the knowledge economy. This is the economy of technology. We have to think differently if we really have to grow ourselves around 6%, 5%. As Saif earlier said, our import and the export gap is very high. And again, why we are asking IMF to support us, we have to meet our current account deficit. We have to finance our import export.
You think that, Saif Saab, do you think that our political parties, regardless of which political parties, are fully cognizant of how big a reality IMF is? Because I think that perhaps there was, some reality check that was needed in the last government. I don't know if I'm putting it rightly, but in terms of the reality of IMF and what it means for our economy, you think that our other political parties, the mainstream political parties, are cognizant of it?
Mahrukh, it's a little depressing to say this, but I think that most of the top tier leadership, if you make them sit on a live TV program, and if you ask them that where does the IMF come from, they won't even know that. And I'm being very honest, Dr. Saab would second me on that. If you ask them that what's
well, perhaps you underestimate our politics.
No, I'm not underestimating. Maybe
even they don't know what the agreement is.
maybe the politicians...
we will have to agree to disagree on that.
Maybe the politicians have overestimated themselves, and that is why they've landed the economy there. As a political analyst and as someone who studies economy closely, I'd be very honest to say that if you ask most of these people what's the difference between the lending agendas of the World Bank and the IMF, they would not even know that. They would not only know that the World Bank works on an ideological agenda and the IMF is the lender of last resort. Yes. And if you ask them, if you ask any leading politician right now, except an expert on finance, that what are structural adjustment programs, they would not be knowing that. So I think this for the very first time I'm saying it out on the national television, that our politicians need to, you know, take their economic lessons before coming to the elections.
Okay, I'm going to...
Even our administration don't have enough idea about what's going on.
Does your survey say that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask that from Qaiser Sahab here. Qaiser Sahab, you know, I will have to say that you are somebody who has an economic background. You're a businessman also, and I'm sure, and I think, you know, I can say this with full confidence, that there are people within your party also who have an economic background, who are fully cognizant of the economic realities at this time. But if you talk about perception, you know, purely, and we are looking at, you know, two educated people who have a economic background, whose perception is that your party does not know these things, or, you know, all political parties don't. Why is the perception so bad?
You see, to somewhat this perception is right. Our parties should have more and more people from the economic background who should be part of their parties and who should take active action. But you see, presently our constitution is very clear that all economic matters are to be voted and to be discussed in National Assembly, not in Senate. You see, even national budget is passed with the majority of members of National Assembly. So at least I have a chance to be chairman of Standing Committee Finance since 2015. And only those, there are 21 members in the Standing Committee on Finance, and all parties send their experts. But still we need more and more capabilities and more attention. But we are giving...
True, Qaiser Sahab, that you need people, perhaps you need to pick out people from the grassroots level. You need people to pick up, to be brought about from the grassroots level that can, you know, actually make a difference. And perhaps that kind of a rethink is needed in all political parties. You know, people who are perhaps, you know, and experts on in their respective fields. They don't necessarily have to be from out of Pakistan. I think there's enough people in Pakistan who can perhaps, you know, guide us or steer us in the right direction.
Yes, Mahrukh, you are very right, but you see this parliamentary system, it's not very easy to be elected in National Assembly. You see, there's huge constituencies. Each constituency has about 800,000 people of population. So, and the member should go from pillar to post.
One of the main reasons, one of the main problems is in our political system is that you can't have somebody from the grassroots level contesting an election of, you know, a National Assembly or even Punjab Assembly. And therefore, we have to resort to electables who have that kind of power, who have that kind of clout, who have that kind of, you know, the means to contest the elections.
Mahrukh, I fully agree with you. You see, I give my example. I live in Karachi. So before coming to politics, I was elected as a president of Karachi Chamber of Commerce Industry. Then my late son, he went to Lahore for business, and then he was elected there as a president of Lahore Chamber of Commerce Industry. With this background, I came to have this in election. It is my 7th election, but it's not so easy. I have to devote a lot of time. There is many matters of people who are, of course, maybe not very economical, knowing for that economical matter. There is a personal matters also. So we have to devote more time. And it's not so easy for people with the economic background that they could give so much time, and there's no incentive in the political system in our country. You see parties, they are manipulated also. They are there is a monopoly in the parties. Good people with knowledge and with that economic background, they should have some incentive. They should be given some preference. And the party should encourage those people. So
let me
that
come
has
back
not
to you
been
on that. I think that's a very important point. Dr. Nasir, there are no incentives in the system. There is also a system that demands a certain amount of clout, a certain amount, you to have some, bare minimum means, which I don't think are bare minimum if you talk about the National Assembly seat or even the Provincial Assembly seat. For you to directly contest from a constituency, you have to have a certain, you have to have certain assets, you have to have, there's a background that's needed. So our system doesn't allow the grassroots level people to come up.
Absolutely true. What we are say at PIDE that we need to reform our election process. In other democracies where there is a regular election on the different constituencies, that allows people to elect those deliver. But here you even look at the one example that we restricted our election, that the provincial government as well as federal government would have a election at the same time. Why not we have a regular election on a continuous basis? And if we allow the local election on a regular basis, that provide a real opportunity to the grassroots people, because at that space they don't need enough financial capital. They only need a social capital, and they have enough social capital within that small area. Of course, it's true they might not have a social capital at a very large scale, but if it has enough capital at a very small scale and he or she is elected at the local level and deliver, probably that would provide some leverage and space to these people to expand their social capital.
So you're saying you go back to local bodies.
And ultimately come to the mainstream. Of course, now our election is election of electable. Our election is meant for to choose people, not to elect people. So if we allow this highly what we call a costly election, no one will be willing to invest where there is a lot of investment is required, and these political parties earn a lot of rent during their tenure to make those such big investments.
So who's going to reform the system? Saif, who do you think is going to reform the system? The political parties, for them the system is really entrenched, and it's not going to reform itself. Where do you, one of the parties that a lot of people thought were going to reform things didn't do that at all. We didn't see any reforms there. And I think
they reversed the reforms.
Well, that's I'm not going to say that, but I feel like there were no reforms.
Right.
So what do we do, as in, where do we go from here?
Mahrukh, I'll pick up my argument from where Qaiser Saab left. Coming from such a senior Democrat and a technocrat as well, because I know what an expert on finance he is. He said that there are no incentives in the political system for politicians. This is coming from such a senior Democrat, such a senior member of parliament, having contested several elections. And this statement, it really makes 250 million people think that where is the democracy of this country heading towards? Number one. Number second, what's the bare minimum? The bare minimum in this country for democracy to be is for the electable to be having 4 or 5 V8s and 4 or 5 vehicles at the back as well. This is the bare minimum. Now, if you look at the European models of democracy, let's not talk about the Far East, because the Far East is more oriented towards autocracy rather than, democracy. There's a difference. Let's not talk about the Chinese model, that's state-controlled capitalism with one-party system, right, Dr. Saab? Let's simply talk about maybe the Western European democracies. Communal democracy, or what you reiterated earlier, local bodies is the solution to resolving the political problems of the country. Now, please keep this in mind. Local bodies are responsible for resolving the political problems. But when it is about the economic problems, you need to have a national economic policy. You need to be bringing some technocrats into every government. And regardless of the fact which party they are affiliated with, those technocratic policies must continue for a good 7 to 10 years, because this is the very fundamental of macroeconomics, that any particular macroeconomic policy doesn't work in the short run. You have to wait for a good 5 to 6, 7 years, and ultimately you have to see the results.
And we have to know that there will be a continuation of the system.
Absolutely.
Let me, Qaiser Saab, you talk, I think Saif is talking about technocrats, but isn't it true that there have been times when there have been, technocrats have been incorporated into the system for economies in particular, and is it because the system isn't, doesn't continue for those 5-6 years that they haven't yielded results? What is it, in your opinion?
You see, we have already lot of experience with technocrats. Most of our government ruled by the army, or so that has been just attracting technocrats. But what were the results? The main emphasis is that those technocrats should also be familiar with the people. They should be knowing about the grassroots level problems. So only just our technocrats, they come into the government and they go back when the government is not there. So this type of experience we could not have successful. Actually, what you said earlier, our
is the
parties
solution a team of technocrats working with your, politicians who know the nitty-gritty, who know the grassroots level issues, politics? Is that the solution in your opinion?
Yes, those people, parties should attract, parties should invite those people who are from the economic background, who know about some details about how to resolve the matter, and they should be more approachable to the people. So this has up to now.
Think tanks with all political parties anyway, usually all over the world. Perhaps those think tanks are what's needed, and all political parties need to invest in those think tanks now.
Yes, but our people from our constituency, you see, they demand different type of their matters to be resolved. You see, mainly they have conflicts. They are
Are local bodies the solution in your opinion?
Yes, I feel that there is a good opportunity, and what is which our party should realize there should be open discussion and debate there, and there should be also elections in the.
So there should be democracy within your political parties. That's what you're saying.
Yes, I'm saying that up to now I have not seen any. Even you see, you cannot give. There's no say of the members of the National Assembly in that formulation of the policies. Still, all technocrats or all bureaucrats, they form policies. I tell you very frankly, I had experience, long experience of 31 years. You see, the MLAs or MPAs, they are not given a proper weightage on their.
It's not one political party, Qaiser Sahab, it's all political parties. Yes. All political parties, and you are saying that enough weightage is not given to public representatives who come with votes into the parliament. To perhaps work for their constituents. And if you talk to the political parties, they would probably say that the people who come don't work for their constituencies. So it's an argument from both sides. So I guess the solution is a reform in the system only.
Yes, of course, there should be reforms. And you see, even now, the manifestos are being debated by different political parties, but their members of National Assembly or their colleagues, they are not much involved in that process. Only few technocrats or few bureaucrats, they are. So there should be more and more debate and more interaction.
More involvement of politicians who are actually having their constituencies or even electables in those manifestos, and that is perhaps needed. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have today, but thank you so much for joining us today. Qaiser Ahmad Sheikh Sahab, Dr. Nasir Iqbal, Saif, Jamshed, Baryar. I think the discussion was extremely fruitful and educating. If we think about what we need to do for a reform in the system, if we think about why we need democracy within political parties, if we think about where we need the involvement of our grassroots, public in the political scene, all of those are questions that need to be asked. All of those are questions that I think, perhaps is an optimistic view, that political parties are asking. And I think this interest in manifestos is perhaps a welcome step for all political parties, because they realize the importance of these manifestos and a rethink for the people of Pakistan and how important it is for their perception, whichever political party it is, because all political parties need to work on their perception for the people of Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.